Hello out there. Welcome to the Post-apocalyptic show. Nothing says a good time like talking about worlds after nuclear destruction and dystopia, talking animals, atomic nights, radiation, mutants, glowing skin, phosphorus, strodium 90, all sorts of things that we learn from comics and stuff like that, right? If you are tuning in from the future, we are coming at you live on January 19th, 2026, Eastern Standard Time, roughly 12:35. And right on cue, guys, be like John. Make sure you have subscribed. Make sure you have thumbed up and shared the video, and make sure you hit that bell so you know when we do these things. We are in the winter months here on Eastern Standard Time on the East Coast, if you will. And that gives me a little bit more time to do things like this, right? Spontaneous little shows that I didn't know I was going to do until about 30 minutes ago. Okay. So thanks for joining me. I hope you guys are staying warm. We have a huge cold snap going on, and there's going to be a huge well, supposedly it's going to get colder even here. And right off the bat, we have Afro Sci-Fi. How are you doing? Great to see you, right? I'm glad you can join us for some post-apocalyptic measures here, right? What's going to go on, right? So just to kind of jump on into it, just to get started, we're going to try to move here. We got things to do, places to be, but I got to tell you, man, this is actually one of my favorite genres. It's probably due to the era I grew up. I grew up in a time where we actually believed as kids nuclear war was coming. For some reason, in my childlike mind, I figured if we made it to 1984 and went past that, we were good. Okay, the Cold War was there. We'd already grown up with our parents who had to learn how to duck and cover, depending on your age. That's the era I grew up in. And then all of a sudden, ABC had a show called the Day After Tomorrow, the next day, something like that. It was right on television. I thought I was 10 years old, and it showed nuclear destruction of America. And I watched this thing, and I'm surprised I didn't have an ulcer from all the Coca-Cola I had to drink just to calm my nerves. Like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? Like it was coming. So this was like a reality. So one of the things that actually came out of this is what I grew up with were fantastic comics, cartoons, and television shows and movies that dealt with the dystopia, right? One of the first things that we saw that right before I was a few years before I was born, thus I grew up with it, the original sci-fi franchise, in my opinion, before Star Wars, when it came to toys and television shows and Saturday morning cartoons and play sets and stuff, Planet of the Apes, right? And then we had things in comics going on like Kamandi and OMAC and Doomsday Plus One by John Byrne, right? And then where I really came into the fold of getting into this, I had all this stuff laid out. Was 1980, we had Thundar. Now, I've talked about the Stepdad and the Uncle's Collection. OMAC #1, which I'll be showing, that's one of the covers by Jack Kirby. I had to flip over at night so I could go to sleep. Kamandi, absolutely love Kamandi. It battles in my head as my favorite series of all time with James Robinson's Starman, right? So 1980, 7-year-old me, don't mind sharing that. This is where I ended up becoming a Jack Kirby fan, because Steve Gerber, Jack Kirby, Alex Toth, a lot of people who were into doing comics were working on this. And so we had a comet became a comet flew between them. I think they were in 1999. A comet flew between the Earth and the Moon, causing natural disasters and destructions. And then we come thousands, I don't know, thousands of years in the future, and we have wizards and mutated mutants and mutated animals and plants, and the world just being, I freaking love this cartoon, right? I'm not speaking very well, right? It's always stayed with me. Land of the Lost, things like that. Then for me, one of my favorite books since I was 12, this actually came out in the 50s. I should have got the original printing that came out, because this ended up, the original cover, one of the covers to this from the 50s, Starman's Son. There were several versions of the cover that came out with versions of the title, but the actual story stayed the same. They'd actually end up influencing Kamandi. And now that I'm talking, I wished I had grabbed it. I've shown it in a previous video, right? But with Starman's Son, This was just fantastic. There was nuclear devastation on the earth. We have broken down into tribes. That is supposed to be a gigantic house cat, right? There's mutated animals in this. And basically, Starman's son, the tribe, they are Starmen. And you come to find out why they're Starmen. This was written by Andre Norton, a female in the 50s, which is just fantastic. I absolutely love this book. It's my probably my favorite book. And when I was 12 years old, I was hanging out with one of my stepdad's friends. By this point, I think as time went on, he became more my friend. He was 17 and I was 4 years old when I met him. And while we were playing, we were kind of watching him on the Nintendo play Legend of Zelda. I think that no, yeah, I was over there a lot. But anyway, we were doing something. Something video game wise and everything like that. We played Dungeons and Dragons also with a group, but I looked upon his bookshelf and this caught my eye and he gave me the book because I started reading it immediately, right? And they're called Starman because man's destruction of man cost us the stars. These guys were a tribe that were based on astronauts, more or less, who were going to be astronauts going to the stars. And then, like I said, the Bangs and Whimpers, a bunch of short stories. This is without knowing that it was Neil Gaiman. This was the first time I read a Neil Gaiman story. Neil Gaiman has a story in this with Philip K. Dick. These were the things I was reading as a preteen and a teen. When did this come out? Because this is my second copy. Well, no, it might be my first. I don't know. I've rebought some of these things over the years too when I ran across them, right? Oh, this is the 90s, 82, 85. Okay, 1999, right? So I'm thinking of another book, probably a book called Stalkers and stuff, right? Anyway, what can you do? So anyway, I think we've had time for everybody to jump in here. And what I've done is I have informally just kind of gone across my bookshelves and across a few boxes that I have out, and I grabbed some post-apocalyptic comics, right? I have done live shows and videos on this stuff before, but I love revisiting. This is my 16th year doing YouTube. I have done it scattered across the years, so I don't feel like it's rehashing things. It's more like revisiting just something you love, and it gets you excited about, right? So let's see what we have here. Afro Sci-Fi. Okay, what we got here? Okay, show. Here we go. Hex was my favorite post-apocalyptic comic. Jonah Hex in 2050 AD was amazing. I regret that I sold those. Yeah. John 704. He enjoyed Hex also. Yeah. That's where they made him into Mad Max. That's what I was getting at before I kind of lost track. The movies that came out, right? I saw like this version of A Boy and His Dog. Who was that? Ray Bradbury or Harlan Ellison? Probably Harlan Ellison. I saw this weird movie with a guy who ended up going into being on Miami Vice, if you will. A Boy and His Dog. I ended up reading that later on, right? A lot of the 50s nuclear Holocaust stuff really made an impact on me as I grew up kind of discovering this stuff and reading it. There Will Come Soft Rains is probably one of my favorite short stories / poems in my head. I thought that was fantastic, right? But in the movies, let's face it, what we got, the king of them all, was Mad Max the Road Warrior, right? There's a Mad Max before that, sure, Australian movie. And then we got Mad Max. And then we ended up with Beyond Thunderdome. I was 12 years old. I would leave my apartment complex, walk about 2 or 3 miles on this dirt road, cross a swinging bridge over the Clinch River, and walk right up the back parking lot of the mall, go in the back door, up a long hallway, turn left. There's the movie theater on a Sunday, and I'm watching Beyond Thunderdome, right? $5 for ticket. $5 for my ticket and a little bit of soda and a little bit of popcorn. I can't remember if I got a candy, but if I had candy, I snuck it in. I'm still that guy. I don't care what they say, right? So anyway, yeah, this genre has been around for as long as I can remember. So let's just kind of jump in here and see what we get at. So one of the first things I do recommend getting this book, at least for posterity, at least for if you're a little bit of a comic book historian, if you will. But this Great Disaster, which felt like it took forever to come out after they announced it, the Great Disaster DC Showcase. This thing is just packed full of Silver Age stories. a full run of Hercules Unbound from the 70s. Jose Garcia Lopez and Wally Wood actually worked on this book that lasted for a little bit. Walt Simonson came on, did some designs on it. The Atomic Knights popped up. Atomic Knights are the first post-apocalyptic stories I can remember reading as a kid in the 70s, and a bunch of the reprints of the 100-page, 80-page giants DC that the stepdad and them had. I'm a huge John Broome Atomic Knights fan, and they're all in here, right? Those are from the 60s. This thing has Superman stories, Adventures from Strange Tales, The Bomb, The Day After Doomsday, where we have a Prince Valiant-like story. But this also has the complete set of Hercules Unbound, like I said. Now Hercules Unbound, they end up trying to tie all the great disaster books and atomic stories they had together, right? And I'll get into that, right? They even have essays in here where they're trying to give you a continuity of all these great disaster stories, how it happened. Basically, Kamandi came out by Jack Kirby. That was probably his hit at DC because, he was on the book for 36 to 40 issues. He stopped writing. Joe Kubert started doing covers and they went on there. But this has just so much great stuff in it. Even black and white, it works. The Atomic Knights rode their gigantic Dalmatians, their suits, their knights, the suits, the suits of armor of them being knights out there, protected them from the radiation. They were twins. So yeah, I'm a huge Atomic Knights fan going all the way back. It's black and white, so I don't know if you can see this. And we have a little bit of Kirby here, right? A little bit of Kirby in here from DC Super Special, DC First Issue Special Atlas, right? And a post-apocalyptic world, if you will, right? Now, speaking of God, that was a one-shot. James Robinson ended up bringing him in. Jack Kirby works in black and white just as well as he does color. Let's face it, all right? The guy who helped come up with Thundar. This, like I said, this has Superman with Kurt Swan. Then we get Hercules Unbound. I actually have the first issue of this signed by Jose Garcia Luis Lopez. This came out in the 70s, right? And basically what they're saying is that if you go into mythology, I think Hercules was tied to a rock and he was stuck to the rock or whatever was going on. And due to thousands of years going by and atomic age, he was set free. He goes into this world and they ended up tying it to OMAC and a little bit of Kamandi as you go in there. Walt Simonson would come on here and it had a lot of great talent on it. Walt Simonson would come on here and do some redesigns on the costume, and it would work up. So great disaster. I highly recommend that. I keep it on my shelf for easy access. And I tell you what, that thing was announced and then it never came out and then they postponed it and then just a lot of stuff going, right? Now for modern stuff for you guys who are popping in here, I'll show you two that are relatively modern. This is very modern, right? But this is the trade. Somewhere I'll probably have an issue or two in Redcoat. But we have GIEGER by Jeff Johns, right, over there at Image, I believe. And this is just simply fantastic. We have a character where we slowly get his origin. We get introduced to this world. You guys are probably better read on this. This is all I've read of it. But if I remember, and I read this when it came out, but I think it was like, they're sort of setting up kingdoms after Atomic Age. We have a guy with some spotty memories. We slowly start seeing here. I felt like there was a little bit of Scarlet Pimpernel in here, but I'm not that well read, and I haven't really touched Scarlet Pimpernel since the 90s. But yeah, I totally get what was going on in this. Kids love it. Gary Frank art in this book. That's always a great team. A little bit of slower pacing for Jeff Johns, but here we got Mr. DC, who jumped around to Marvel for a little bit in the 2000s, did some issues of Avengers, came back, did great things at DC for about a decade, and then came out with GIEGER, some of his own stuff. And now that little universe that he made it at Image with Redcoat and GIEGER seems to be blending. What was it, Junkyard Joe and things like that, seems to be blowing up at the time. So if you like that, leave that in comments. You can let me know more about it. Should I actually try to track those down? It is my favorite one. Here we go. After Sci 5, I was never sure if all the great disaster stories were set in the same timeline. I'm at the point with those books to where I always accepted no. You know what I mean? John Byrne did this fantastic Generations miniseries that showed of Superman and Batman and things took place in real time. It was 4 issues. Each issue took place a decade after the other one, and we got a little bit of a comic history, how the stories felt in the 30s, the 40s, the 80s. And then he came out with part 2 that went in between those issues. Then he did a part 3 where he played with a time travel story, right? We had a story going forward and backwards at the same time. Anyway, he brought in the Great Disaster and kind of found a place to put it in between his time with the Legion of Superheroes, and he tried to make it in there with that story and stuff. I say just have fun with it, right? After Marvel has spent over 20 years destroying their continuity, well, who cares at this point? The bloom is off the rose with a lot of that stuff. It would be fantastic. I personally did a video where I showed, maybe a live stream or a video where, and it's in the past year, where I showed my continuity for Batman, the Batman stories, how they hit, what counts, what doesn't. And that's what I'm starting to do with a lot of these books. I feel like if Marvel from 1961, probably up to about, I don't know, 2002 or something like that, I feel like you can talk continuity there and keep it straight. After that, what's the point, All right, there was an Electric Warrior miniseries a few years ago set near the Great Disaster, but a few centuries before the Legion. It was quite good. That's what I was saying, Afro. There's tons of them there, right? And like I said, there's tons out there, Cadillacs and dinosaurs. The only one I wished I'd taken a little bit more time to pull out is Boday's Cobalt 60, things like that. So that's a modern book. And let's go with another modern book, right? I did this in this last video. I actually put a video up, guys. 2 books that were pitches for Kamandi at DC, one by Kurt Busiek, one by Paul Pope. And DC said no, so they ended up making something else out of this, right? So if you are a Kamandi fan, you may want to check out Autumn Lands. I think there's 14 issues. This came out in 2014. I think the last issue, number 14, came out around 2016 or 17, relatively new. I have all 14 issues, of course, and I did a video on this, but this is absolutely fantastic, in my opinion. Thousands of years after a nuclear war, people don't even know what humans are. These are animals. There is magic, huge magic in there. It gets into social classes. And then that magic is dying. Right? They have floating cities. Their society is really held together by magic. They have floating cities they live in. And it's held up by magic. Well, the magic is going. So a bunch of wizards get together and they're going to combine their magics to pull the great warrior or whatever it was that brought magic to the world. They're going to bring him to the future in order to maybe revive magic again. And things go horribly wrong. And there is blood spilling and cursing. The human they bring back, which they don't know what he is, they actually had wars over the centuries about the great warrior. Well, I can't remember what they called him, man. Sorry, man. The great legendary person, I don't know, who brought their magic. They had wars over, like, no, he was one of us. He was a cat. He was a crocodile. He was a coyote. And they all actually had wars trying to determine who he was. And a barn owl wizard, they walk around like in 16th, 17th century clothes, and they talk very proper, and they have etiquette. And then when they pull the human up from the past, he's a bloody cross between Conan and Kamandi. He's got a schlong flopping around, and he's immediately like killing the bison men who are attacking all the other animals and stuff like that, right? Great stuff. I actually enjoyed it. I actually wish there was room for Kurt Busiek to do more writing on this. I feel like it's actually the themes that he comes up with and the contradictions of what's savage and civilized, with the humans. And he's so savage, he freaks the animals out. And then you have a barn owl wizard who looks at him because he passes out after the great fight and traveling thousands of years through time. He's disgusted. He was like, look at this pink thing, this shellless, featherless, hairless, scaleless thing is our savior. You know what I mean? And you're just sort of like, yeah, Meanwhile, as they're talking Shakespearean, he's sitting there like cursing like a dog at him. You can tell he's military and stuff, right? So it's wild. That's a good one, right? So yeah, Autumn Lands. At least check it out. It's good and cheap. That's the best way to have it. All right, guys. All right, make sure you comment. Okay. So now we're going to get into some classics here. Right here behind me, as you can see, is the full box set of Akira, right? And this is considered, there's several printings of Akira that people are very happy with, right? And a lot of people feel like what Epic Comics through Marvel did with the Akira story coming over from Japan, a classic by all means. They feel like this is the way to do it. They actually have it to where they have the pages flipped so we can read them the American way, right? From left to right, I guess how you're looking at it and stuff, right? And they colored them, and a lot of people love these square bound editions that they have, right? I love my hardback editions, right? But that's neither here nor there. You got to get to the story. Post-apocalyptic Neo Tokyo, years after Tokyo blew up, because a mythical figure, if you will, called Akira, that everyone is seeking, secret government facilities, psychic little kids who look like old people, bikers, dystopian futures, motorcycles, gangs. It's all in here, man. And then Tokyo ends up blowing up, and now we have a entirely new story halfway through it of a blown up Tokyo for the second time. Now that Akira has awakened. Oh my God, there's just so much in there, and there is no way to review this. Now, there is a anime of the manga, right? So what's great about that anime is that if you have read Akira and then you watch the anime, the same writer of the manga ended up writing the anime, and it actually is supplemental to the original story. There's sort of little scenes in there. It's not a straight adaptation of the manga. The anime actually has scenes that fill in gaps in between some of it and enriches it, which I thought was fantastic, right? And then if we go even further back, probably I was never quite the anime fan as I grew up because we had horrible cuts, terrible dubbing. The first anime, if we can consider it anime, maybe Japanimation, as we called it back in the day, as we were making up these words, was in the late 70s when I saw Battle of the Planets, which ended up being Science Ninja, Gatchaman, and things like that over the years, right? But around the time of the VHS tapes, I saw my first Studio Ghibli movie before I knew what we were seeing, and it was cut horribly with terrible, terrible dubbing, and they called it Warrior of the Winds. And even the movie poster, which I had in my house because the said guy Buford, my friend worked at the video store as a manager, and he would bring me, my brother, my stepdad, everybody, his friends, stand-ups and movie posters that they would have too much of, right? And the movie poster for Warrior of the Winds actually has characters not even in the movie. I can think of one right in the center, right? So basically, one of the most beautiful things ever drawn as a manga in the late 70s is and it's by the guy who ended up going on to form Studio Ghibli, and this was their first movie. If you like Spirited Away, Princess Monaco, oh my God, Howl's Moving Castle, all that stuff like that. Well, here's where it started, because Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. And I have several of these, right? This came out in America in several forms, but we ended up getting a series of 4-issue miniseries telling the whole story. Because the actual anime is actually like that much of the story of that much story that he did in the 70s. And it's beautiful. It has themes. Basically, it's thousands of years in the future after atomic war. These people, Nausicaa, lives in a valley where the winds keep the radiation out, blowed away. They have windmills for their power and things. But there's the radioactive jungle over there that seems to be growing, and it has gigantic creatures and insects and stuff that may come out and invade them. Then we have another kingdom come into play, and we have giants and all sorts of things, little secrets there of this war, of this world and stuff like that. It's very rich, very good. And then one of my favorite mangas was Appleseed. And I've always assumed this is after a nuclear war, maybe they escaped it and stuff, but you have cyborgs with where they placed human consciousness into them, and it's more or less cops, like a SWAT team. It's so freaking good, man. It's the artwork that really brought me into this. I can never get enough Appleseed. But yeah, it was totally this, right? So I'm not a huge manga, nor am I a huge anime fan, but I love the genre. And when something comes out that grabs me, it grabs me. I think some things are pieces of art. I think in America, we end up getting the best of what they have to offer over in Japan. So there you go. Who figures, right? So there you go. That's those. So, guys, to keep this moving, I want to show you something we should all love. There was a movie in the 90s. There was a movie in 2012 that, thank God, made us forget about the horrible Sylvester Stallone movie in the 90s. I don't blame Stallone. You know what I mean? I can still kind of watch that. The tone was completely wrong, right? But even before that, I ended up hearing about this character before I ever saw a comic of him in it through Anthrax. Yes, yes. Despite my years of listening that I'm still embarrassed about due to a lot of hair glam metal, much of which I still enjoy. White Lion's Wait, Cinderella, you know, you know, Shotgun Sally, by Cats and Boots. I can get eclectic on that stuff too. I was there. Luckily, I had my punk metal roots still right in case there in Anthrax, who ended up leaving New York, and they ended up touring. They ended up being right there when Chernobyl hit, but they also ended up being in England, and they discovered, I'm assuming through 2000 AD, Judge Dredd, and they wrote a song called I Am the Law. And I didn't really get into the music of the song, but it was the lyrics. I'm like, what are they talking about? And little by little, somewhere along the line, I was finally able to see some Judge Dredd. So, just to kind of keep this brief, Judge Dredd started out in the 70s, 2000 AD, where there's nuclear devastation. The entire American East, it's satire of a bit of America, if you will, and a few other things. But the entire East Coast is like Earth, like megalopolis, right? You have cities as big as states or even more. Each building in those cities might as well be its own city inside. And so, a form of justice in this world is that your cop is also the jury, the judge, and the executioner, and you are either arrested on the spot or executed on the spot. And I think the best way to get into this, of all things, was through Judge Dredd and Batman. This is the first of 3 crossovers that they did, right? With actual people who worked on both characters in their respective universes, comic book companies, right? Simon Bisley did this fantastic painted art in it, and I ended up getting to read interviews. Judge Death pops up. I was able to read interviews at the time, probably through Comic Scene or something. This is 1991, I believe. Yeah, 91. I mean, we had Infinity Gauntlet just wrapping up, and then we were getting this. You know what I mean? We had Todd McFarlane doing Spider-Man, Jim Lee on X-Men, Mark Silvestre doing his thing, Rob Liefeld with the X-Force and Hot. In the middle of this, we had Simon Bisley, the guy who a year before this put out Lobo 1 through 4. It's just a freaking great time. But anyway, in an interview, what he did is he drew in his mind when he was doing his painting work, he was drawing Gotham like it was hell during a heat stroke and Batman as Satan. And this stuff will just blow your mind, right? You really have to slow down and take it in with what's going on. And I remember in the interview, it had to be Comic Scene. Judge Death pops up, and you have mutants and telepaths that work, due to the nuclear devastation in that world. They can't wear their Judge Dredd helmet because it keeps them from reading minds and things like that. Judge Anderson, Judge Death was the evil version of the judges with his other judges from another, kind of the 4 horsemen of apocalypse from another dimension. They would judge people for being alive. That's because all crime is committed by people who are alive. But this was just fantastic. And I really feel like that was my finally, after listening to that song for like 4 or 5 years by Anthrax, I finally got to read some Judge Dredd. You know what I mean? Which was fantastic. So I highly recommend that one. Right. So Akira, Appleseed, Judge Dredd, Nutshell, and things like that. Now, if you're really hungry for more, there's plenty out there of Judge Dredd. I mean, this book is, I think we're creeping up on 50 years, guys. There's all sorts of things to get that is Judge Dredd. Brian Bolland worked on this, John Wagner. They're still making new stuff today. And the fact that the 2012 movie, which I highly recommend, that feels like it is a Dredd story. It's just a one day at work and it feels epic. That Dredd, Yeah, that's what you need to watch to really get into this. The fact that we do not have a TV show or nor a sequel to that is a crime against nature, in my opinion, right? But there's just so many things out there with Judge Dredd. One of my favorite, we're talking post-apocalyptic, is this. This is Judge Death Lives. This is a bunch of classic stories with Judge Death, with Brian Ball and stuff from like 1980, 81 with some classic cover panels and things like that. So yeah, Judge Dredd. Now the one story that I'm really wanting to find, apparently, is that when it hit 2000 AD, it was a multi-part story. 2000 AD, it's an anthology series over in England, right? Magazine style and everything, right? And apparently they were doing this story of a man. I can't remember if he was like naked or, didn't, he definitely didn't have helmet, or if he had robes. I don't know. Who knows what he had, but he was crossing the desert. And then all of a sudden, towards the end of the story, he gets to the gates of a city. And when they let him in, you find out at the very, I guess, last page, it's Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd. You read a Judge Dredd story without knowing it was Judge Dredd due to him not being in uniform and out in the desert making his way back to the city or something. I guess I would love to find the title of that story and get that one. They've bound to have collected that one. So if you know what that story is with a title, issues, numbers, or anything, give me a yell. All right. We have Gore Vidal here, guys. Oh, no. Comments. Come back to me. All right. So for some reason, my keyboard isn't working, so I have to use my touch screen. All right, Gore Vidal is here. Check out Gore Vidal's channel, guys. Thank you for the Walt Simonson interview and for the Legion Hernandez collection. Gore and I text and email each other. I consider Gore, you're a good friend. Listening while gathering my Love and Rockets books. Really, I need to get off. I need to get some Love and Rockets, man. The current issue about Maggie visiting her dying father has me worried. Oh man, talk about a book that I can tell being invested in for decades. Those characters in Love and Rockets, they age in real time back from the 80s. He's worried about the fates of people, the characters in there. Make sure you check out the comments here, guys. If you read Love and Rockets, Fate of Hoppies, okay. And then there's also The Order of Death by Public Image. Are you kidding me? Oh, do I have something to write on? Okay. I will have to just remember that. The Order of Death. Okay. Afro Sci-Fi, the IDW Judge Dredd series was very good. Avoid the DC series that came out in the 90s. Yeah, I read one or two issues of that, and even from the cover, I knew this was going to be a mess. I don't think I still have those. I have a shelf of my Judge Dredd stuff. I'm real picky. There's so much out there. Thank you for the Eagle Press Comics, and thank you Eagle Press Comics in 1983 for introducing me to Ballin and Judge Dredd. I saw it in a comic scene and ordered it. Oh, that's fantastic. Bud Plant cataloging and got them. Afro Sci-Fi. The title of the Dredd story was The Dead Man. Great art by George. Oh my God. See, this is why I love doing this, guys. This is why I keep doing YouTube, and I love these live shows, and I love for all us to get together and talk. Oh, okay. It's up on the screen. I can go back. I cannot believe I have paper around here. I have paper. I cannot believe I don't have anything to write with. I usually have a Sharpie marker within hand distance where I label some stuff like signed when I find it and stuff. Dead Man. Oh my God, look at this. Ah, that is awesome. Oh, thanks, guys. Y'all humble me. Appreciate it. Dead Man. And then we have the Public Image. This is fantastic. Thank you guys so much. That is great stuff, man. So to continue in that vein, before we get to, I guess, more mainstream stuff here in the States, what do we have here, right? Like I said, this is real informal, right? So I got these a few years ago at a McKay's. And when I showed them and I started reading some of this, I think this is maybe the first time I saw Strodium Dog. So it turns out Strodium Dog is by the same creators, Carlos. Oh my God, what is his name? Where is it? John Wagner, Carlos Esquera. Probably totally butchered that name. The same guys that did Strodium Dog, right? Strodium Dog is in a post-apocalyptic future full of mutants, and it takes place out in space because mutants are shunned. It's Strodium Dog. And strodium is a oh my God element, associated with nuclear war. All right, cobalt, strodium, and all that, strodium radiation or something. Sort of a bounty hunter, and he goes back and forth, and he has his crew. And I, being a person who prides himself on accuracy, back in the day, you can go back and watch a lot of my older videos, and it's more or less profiles, history, trivia, things like that on characters and comic books and stuff. I reached a point where I picked up something new and didn't know what the hell I was saying. And during a video, I believe, I was like, "This Strodium dog seems to be a ripoff of Judge Dredd." And and you know, I deserved it. Unmercilessly, they came at me. A lot of people were like, "How dare you say that?" And they were right. They were absolutely right. Because after I made that stupid comment, I continued to read, and I'm like, "Oh, I get it. Oh, you know what I mean?" Yeah, I went in did not read enough or far enough. So Strodium Dog, highly recommend. Judge Dredd, highly recommend. The best, in my opinion. I mean, tell you what, martial law, Judge Dredd, Strodium Dog. There's just certain genres and characters that all just appeal to me, man. I don't care. You know what I mean? They were predecessors and icons of the 80s. They actually killed Strodium Dog, guys, just to give you a heads up, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and skip over here, get a little eclectic on you. And I'm going to show you, this is from the 70s, Charlton 66, when I was actually at his house probably a decade ago now that we're creeping up on. I looked over on a shelf and saw this, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Then I had to order myself one. Is that right? But if you know Eerie magazine, I think it was at Warren Publications back then. This is through New Comic Company, right? This is the story of Hunter. Now, we in the house had all sorts of Savage Swords of Conan, 1984, tons of heavy metal, and scattered creepy and eerie books, right? That I wished I still had those magazines, monster magazines that they, for the movies. A book called Monster, I think, where Stan Lee would take still frames of black and white movies like Frankenstein, and he would have them with a word balloon saying something funny, whatever. It's the 70s. And in the middle of this, Hunter was the guy that got me in this, right? So basically, son of a mutant general and a human mother, Hunter is a half breed warrior who fights for survival on a weird, irradiated Earth. Cursed to remain apart from humanity, Hunter still protects the defenseless with the hope that mankind will someday rise from barbarian and rule again. So he goes through here, and they were called demons. He was half demon, and the mutants were called demons. This was just fantastic. I highly recommend this trade. Paul Neary did the art in this. But what's wild is that this character, as well as just like Strodium Dog, ended up dying. And then a few issues later, as a backup feature, they turned around and ended up doing Hunter 2, right? And I cannot recall if they were trying to pass that off as a character. But this is simply fantastic. Great. It's of his era. It's not well known anymore, except for those that are in the know. And that's the things I like. It's not over. It's not exploited. It's not. It has not been gutted and exploited and thrown out everywhere in movies and changed and stuff. It has not been revamped 20 million times. What is there, and it's just fantastic. There's nothing wrong with it to begin with, right? All right. I think I know where you're laughing. Yeah, the Strodium Dog, my stupid comment. See, I own it, man. When I screw up, I own it. I do not mind a bit. Um, Strodium Dog set in an alternate Judge Dredd future. Dredd and Strodium Dog met twice. That's what I'm getting at. When Carlos died, I ended up finding something like that out. I'm not going to dig in my memory right now, so I appreciate that. Tim Merritt is a huge fan of Rogue Trooper. Tim Merritt has been popping back up. Tim Merritt is another guy who has been popping back up into YouTube. He used to be a regular. Hunter is cool gore. Absolutely. I enjoy it. I actually might put it on the stack of to be read. I'm finally reading a bunch of runs that I've collected over the years to have the full run. I'm finally getting around to reading those. Seth Rogen is making a Hunter Netflix. Are you fucking serious? Oh no. That could go either way with Seth Rogen, man. Okay, let's hope for let's be positive. I'm going to be positive. Oh my God, how's he even? Oh, yeah, hook, line, and sinker, folks. Make your clip. Make your clip. He got me hook, line, and sinker. Okay, let me take a breather here, and we're going to get back to this. Oh, Gore, that was mean. That was mean. You usually hit me with a Booster Gold joke, and you got me with Seth Rogen today. Oh my God! Right. So, guys, as we're just moving along here, we're going to get into something a little bit more familiar, right? Now, I do not have any Walking Dead anymore. I completely cleansed the Walking Dead. I'm sure if I go through these boxes as I'm thinning out the herd, I'm probably going to find a random issue, right? So that's not a post-apocalyptic, but that is apocalyptic in a way of the world has the dead rose and they were killing people and zombies were walking around and stuff, right? And I'm just from I thought of something I should have got up. Anyway, I did not get that. No big deal, right? But your Terminator, right? Now comics, around 89 or 90, I think, or something like that. Now Comics, which was a company out of Chicago back in the day. They put out some of the first Terminator comics, and they had a miniseries called The Burning Earth that had Alex Ross's first published work in comics, right? 4 issues, right? Later on, we ended up having the Superior Dark Horse get the license, and I think this was from like 1990, but this is James Robinson and Matt Wagner. I'm assuming this is a one shot or something of Terminator. I acquired this over the last 2 years somewhere, and I remember sort of reading it and flipping through it. And what is fantastic about this? What is this? 1991, guys. So anyway, in the middle of the story, we get a pop up. All right. So they really did some cool stuff with this. All right. Matt Wagner, James Robinson. Now, if you don't know, this is years before we would end up knowing who James Robinson is. James Robinson ended up doing the Golden Age miniseries, 94, 93, 94, I believe. And then he had his incredible, again, James Robinson's Starman, which I cannot push on people enough to read all of those, right? So when it comes to dystopia, little insight here. My wife had never seen Predator nor the Terminator. So we have had her watch the first of each movie. Terminator to me holds up. And I just thought of 2 books I wished I'd gotten out to talk about here, right? I'm not going to get too much in the Terminator because I think we all know Terminator, especially we are a certain age. But I wished I had gotten down into this other box down here and got the fantastic Frank Miller written, Walt Simonson drawn RoboCop versus Terminator, where Frank Miller ends up coming with a history that ties RoboCop to the Terminators, which I thought was absolute fun in the early 90s. And I just went blank on the other book that I wished I'd gotten out. It'll pop in my head. This is how my brain works. One thing will lead to the other. One thing will lead to the other. What would that be? Terminator. I don't know. It'll pop in my head. But there's a second book I sort of wished I'd gotten out now. Anyway, moving on here, right? And at the beginning of this movie, I moved ahead and told you guys, like, to me, the original sci-fi franchise where there was movies, toys, Saturday morning cartoons, and things like that, pre-Star Wars, was Planet of the Apes, The Adventures of the Planet of the Apes. Now, I feel like this story is part of our pop culture lore, right? I grew up in a world that I was 4 years old when Star Wars came out. And I feel like that when it comes to the world, not just pop culture, but we lived in 2 eras: before Star Wars, after Star Wars, right? And this was the shit before Star Wars, as I can tell. The franchises left on. Planet of the Apes, I have probably watched that movie at least 100 times over the years. No joke, right? I saw it on television. I saw it on Laserdisc in the early 80s. When my uncle actually came around one time and took me to a friend's, and I had to pick between Grease and Planet of the Apes in order to watch on Laserdisc with a bunch of strangers in a room. I was the only kid. But yeah, Marvel got the license, and this led to Kamandi, as the lore goes, because Carmine Infantino, publisher at DC, was just mad as hell that Marvel got the licensings for the Planet of the Apes. So he wanted Jack Kirby to do a Planet of the Apes like book. And this is where a lot of myths come up, a lot of misinformation. Kirby did indeed do Kamandi in a post-apocalyptic Earth, but there is a story from the 50s with talking animals that he pulled from. The actual book, which I have a copy of, this was based on a French novel. Pierre, oh man, it starts with a B. Thought I was going to get it off the top of my head, right? But I read the book, and the book is actually more like Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Yeah, they actually the ape cities and stuff felt like 1962 cities and things, and a bunch of astronauts ended up crashing outside of the city, and they had buildings and cars and everything like that, with a setting of a futuristic setting where they had somebody was laying in a ship, an actual ship that went through space, and they're able to hold their hand out and make ripples like they're in the water. And then at the end of the book, you find out it's a monkey hand. These are monkeys talking about the time that the human astronauts landed, right? Sorry, guys, I got off track. By the time we got to the movie, we had Rod Serling give it that classic ending with the movie that he actually kind of pulled from one of his Twilight Zone episodes. But anyway, I could talk about this stuff all day long, right? So Marvel put out the books. It was adaptations of the first movie, some extra stories. I think it only lasted 11 years. The licensing has gone all over the place, right? With all sorts of ape stuff. And it blows my mind that it keeps going. We've had crossovers with Green Lantern, Doctor Who. I could have pulled all that out. But my favorite one is when Boom Studios came along and did some fantastic stuff. Kong meets on the Planet of the Apes. Um, and then Boom Studios, I mean, I haven't read these in forever. These are fantastic. The art is fantastic. The political intrigue is there. These are trades. So Boom Studios did a lot of things, and you can find these cheap. As you can see, I bought mine on clearance. I need to get that sticker off. It's been probably a decade. I forgot it was there. But these are just fantastic from Boom Studios back in the day. Great stuff. Great stuff. I feel like those are over a decade old. Let's take a look. I'm gonna leave that out. I have to get that sticker out. But like I said, the artwork in these are phenomenal. Just absolutely phenomenal. Great stuff, right? Okay, Children of Fire. This is from 2012, much older than I remembered. Oh my goodness, right? So I love these two books being side to side because there's a lot of things where I like when I find out that books kind of, you know what I mean? Like, look at that. Side by side, that would be fantastic, right? Two fantastic writers. Of oh God, what is it? Garth Ennis, is he Irish or Scottish? I've met him. You figure I would know. And then of course Alan Moore. Oh my God, I've been doing this for a little bit here, guys. Right. So anyway, two fantastic post-apocalyptic books. One is a bit more on the religion. One is a bit more political. Isn't that wild, right? So let's do V for Vendetta, since we've been on a 2000 AD kick and Warrior Magazine and all that stuff that came over there that I've only heard of, and I have random issues here and there. But V for Vendetta was a 10-issue miniseries. Take a screenshot, Donna. Anyway. And I have the math somewhere that Anonymous has gotten up here, right? But in a post-nuclear war, after a post-nuclear war, England's fascist government has ended up taking over, and they have sections named after body parts. There's the head, the hands, and things like that. And we have Evie, and in the middle of all this, we have the anarchist of V that gets in there, right? And I'm going to stop right there because I'm going to go down a tunnel, ended up retelling the whole story, right? Yes, they did a movie of this, and as I understand, we have James Gunn getting ready to do something that's maybe a more faithful adaptation. A lot of people still love the movie. I was just amazed that they were able to at least visually get the character right and have the important scenes from the book, right? Now, I could have read this a lot sooner than I did when it came out because I made a mistake, right? I made an assumption. I was young. I was in my teens, late teens, right? Because it turns out that when this was completed in America by David Lloyd and Alan Moore, it ended up being a 10-issue series. Up to this point, all maxi series, when these things were still relatively new, were 12 issues. Sometimes you had 2 issues, a few 3 issues, then you had 4, 6, and at this time, 12. Okay, I never saw a 10. So I would find these in boxes complete, thinking they were incomplete because there's only 10 issues. I want all 12, so I would buy other things. Could have kicked myself, right? But as far as post-apocalyptic goes, this is a bit more on, if I remember what Alan Moore said, Margaret Thatcher scaring the hell out of people in the 80s. So he built a dystopian world based on everything Margaret Thatcher supposedly wanted to do. All right. So yeah, so quite a few things in there, right? And I feel like a lot of people may be well versed in V, right? But then we get into Just a Pilgrim, which I absolutely love, right? This post-apocalyptic world comes about due to the sun uh enlarging just enough to where it dries up our oceans. And over years we end up having people burned. And then the kind of thing, I think it shrunk enough to where we could go outside again, right? But all our oceans ended up drying up. Things mutated. There's things, horrible monsters out there that as you're walking across the seabed, like the Wild Wild West, trying in your wagon train, all of a sudden a monster will grab you, pull you down. And you're not just being ate. It's not going to eat you. It's going to impregnate you with its brethren and put you back out there. And you're going to swell up like a gigantic circle with nothing but arms your head, and you freaking out because you know you have been impregnated. Okay, so basically, just the pilgrim. It's his take on a little bit of a religion. There, this guy is a bit of a fanatic. You end up finding out he did indeed go insane. He has an origin story that I have never seen such of. That when I was reading this, I was actually like, oh my god, because it's completely plausible. You know, let's just, he was set adrift with 4 of his people after their ship went down out in the ocean on a raft, and he was out there for so long that he ended up well, let's just say he ends up drinking water out of their skulls, from rainwater out of their skulls, and he's completely insane. He has a cross burned on his face, and yeah, there's a few things that go in there. Now, this edition is signed by Garth Ennis. It took me a while for me to get around with Garth Ennis, a guy who was proudly atheist, yet he did not mind to take that material of religion and things like that and embed it in his work. You know, not a big deal. Not a big deal. It was personally me, right? So let's get back down to something indie, something cheap that I hope you can find. Tom Scioli, right? This is described as post-apocalyptic. The other day when I shot the video about the 2 KAMANDI inspired books, in that video I said post-apocalyptic. And I'm like, where did I get that? Well, it's from American Barbarian by Tom Scioli. This is an ex-library edition that, you know, maybe I should clean up. That was canceled and stuff, but that is fine because this is the size of it. This is Jack Kirby inspired, Thundar inspired, Saturday Morning inspired, any Black Star, He-Man, anybody, Thundar, anybody that had a magic sword back in the day. This is what that is. This is your serial Saturday morning 80s inspired post-apocalyptic story set well years and years into the future. This thing is just absolutely fantastic. If you like He-Man, GI Joe, I mean, he draws him like a He-Man figure, and the main antagonist is drawn very much like a little bit of Serpentor there, with a little bit of a He-Man, GI Joe and a He-Man figure, right? Yeah, and yes, the colors are doled out and stuff. It looks like an older comic book, but this just, I mean, I can't even really tell you the plot, man, but because it just goes on and on and on. And it's written a lot more intelligently than your Saturday morning fare back then, right? So that is American Barbarian, right? Let's check this out. Here we go. Dark Horse did an amazing job with the Terminator comics. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. I remember the British version of Planet of the Apes with redrawn Killraven stories called Ape Slayer. Oh my God. That's the first I've heard of that. That is fantastic. Sleepy Reader is here. Say post-apocalyptic and Sleepy Reader Damien will appear. That is fantastic. Saying hello to everyone. Good to see everybody. Glad you could join us, sir. All right, so now we're going to go way back to the 70s, right? And I'm in the middle of finally reading these a little bit close to order when I get more. I kind of checked them out. I remember seeing a few of these issues here. And Jared Osborne, guys, check out his channel. He has the Cavern of Chaos show that we used to do together. And the thing, I cannot believe we were in. I started that show up with Jared due to the pandemic, and I had time. You know, the pandemic had limited my work. I was going to work every day, but we were quarantined in our offices, and I didn't get to travel, so I actually had time on Fridays to do that. And this was actually sort of mentioned because P. Craig Russell came on this book later on. This is in 73, maybe. And Jared Osborne said he was the first, it was the first time he was able to figure out that a artist was gay due to the fact that he drew beautiful men. When he gets on this book, it elevates the book so much, right? But we have War of the Worlds with Killraven that was just mentioned, which is wild. And it was actually the next in the stack. So we are in sync, guys. So basically, Killraven is raised on a world where we go to H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, where the Martians come. Yes, the Orson Welles radio broadcast where people thought it was a real invasion back in the 30s and stuff like that. The reason we have disclaimers now, letting people know that this is not real, okay? But they came down at the turn of the century and they ended up decimating our world. And that post-apocalyptic world, if you will, or whatever, that is the world of Killraven, right? So I don't want to compare him to Conan or anything like that, but it's definitely what little I've read of it. I'm trying to get the whole thing before I read all the way through. I'm picking up a lot of Edgar Rice Burroughs in there. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just my imagination. Let's put that to the side. So yeah, you have War of the Worlds with Killraven. Craven's had a one shot by John Linsner. Alan Davis did something. He popped up in Universe X. So Killraven has popped up over the years and definitely has his fans, right? What do we got here? I keep meaning to do a video on those British Planet of the Apes Killraven comics. I definitely would like to see that. I knew nothing about those. And this is a book that I am going to get rid of in The Purge. Okay. That hurts saying that. I got this at Ollie's. Probably paid less than $5 for this, if I had to guess. This is they don't call it an epic collection. It's in the complete collection, but it's in the style. That is my favorite form of trades right now because shiny paper, complete stories. But we have Deathlock, right? And Bill Mantlo, James DeMantis, Mike Zeck, Rich Buckler, Doug Monick, right? Monick, Doug Munch, excuse me, Doug Munch. All right, we've been doing this for a while. So yeah, this is fantastic. I first discovered Deathlock again. I'm sure there were some comics floating around somewhere with Deathlock in it from the stepdad's collection or the the uncles. I feel like it. I recognized him, right? But for me, it was Captain America by Mark Grunwald, Mike Zeck, 2 issues, post-apocalyptic world. We have a super soldier, if you will. I mean, this is sort of like Captain America go wrong, in my opinion. But this book is an 80s book, a decade before the 80s. Well, not a decade. Probably, was it 75, guys? Am I remembering here? But it doesn't matter, right? So basically, the government took this soldier. I can't remember if he actually died or not. Hooked a computer up with his brain, and he goes around talking to pewter, right? He talks to pewter, and he goes on these missions, and it's got to be, I can't remember if it's a post-apocalyptic world or not, but this is actually some good stuff. As I'm talking, I'm like, am I really going to get rid of this? And then I did not pick up the fantastic, I heard it was fantastic. He's come back a few times. Deathlock has come back a few times, few different iterations. And basically I remember Dennis Cohen getting a hold of him. Dennis Cohen did some Deathlock books. I can't remember if it was a mini series or a short series going on. And I wanted to pick it up just for the Dennis Cohen book, artwork, if you will. But I've never really been a huge fan of this. I think he's cool, but I've never really got into any stories that really grabbed me, right? So your mileage may vary. You may absolutely love this book. You may be screaming at me like, what the hell is wrong with you, man? Yeah. Here we go. Sleepy Reader. I'm so glad you're here for this. I feel like I'm in your wheelhouse here with some of this stuff here. It's like you showed up right when I got into this stuff. I'm just now finally getting around to getting. I just realized I have the Killraven graphic novel behind me here somewhere. I think that came out in the 80s. Definitely, yeah. P. Craig Russell. Anyway, Killraven definitely has an Edgar Burroughs vibe. They eventually let me slow down. Killraven definitely has an Edgar Rice Burroughs vibe, though eventually Don McGregor tried to make it more literary. Okay, I got you. Yeah. I'm just saying that what little bit I have read, it's appealing to me. You know what I mean? Like I'm finally getting on board with it, right? So let me look around here. And guys, we are in we're down to the good stuff, guys. I mean, to be the classic good stuff, right? Let me get this here. I'm squashing some books here. All right. Okay, guys. So, just there for an interlude, I'm going to go ahead and tell you I definitely miss Grant Morrison's multiverse stuff, multiversity, a book that he worked on for years just for them to put out as a crossover and then have it disappear, or he was bringing back the multiple Earths again. But there's actually an Earth where all of these characters, someone was at the beginning of this was trying to talk about the Great Disaster having a continuity, and I was like, I would just let it go. But he came up with an Earth where he put all those characters together. And there's just a page here. Oh, this is such good stuff. I would definitely, even though it's defunct and they'll never use it, I would definitely get a guide to the multiversity because it's just so much fun. It's great how he pulled in a bunch of characters. Here we go. Earth 51. It's where he pulled in a whole bunch of Kirby Great Disaster stuff. Too bad it's not there anymore, you know. But anyway, that's great stuff. That's just an interlude, right? So now we're going to come to the one, and I'm going to go sort of in order a little bit here because this is the book. Everything I have here, this is the stuff that I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering right, this is the KAMANDI inspired stuff. And I'm already seeing a book or two that I hope is here somewhere. Just kind of get on with that, right? So, as I have spoken before, let's just jump in here, right? But this is one of the comics. I wonder if this is the very comic and stuff. This one's a little beat up and stuff. I have 2, 3 of these somewhere. But this is OMAC, a one-man army corps, right? This book, if you go way back to like, I don't know, somewhere between 2010 and 2012, I have a very, unless you are a fan of it, I'm probably going to put you to sleep, man, because I tried to give a straight, in the early days of comic book YouTube here, giving you a straight 30-minute history, showing you citations and books and reading out of Jack Kirby collectors and everything, giving you the history of OMAC. So, in a nutshell, OMAC, which lasted 8 issues, Jack Kirby had come to DC, done the Fourth World, had a contract where he had to do 15 pages a week. After the Fourth World was not quite what he wanted it to be for many reasons, sabotage and other things as well, he ended up having a character come out called OMAC to keep that going after the Fourth World had been canceled. And this is bullet points, people. So basically, this was a story that could have been at Marvel, but he did not like how Marvel was treating him. That's why he went to DC. And this was originally going to be a revamping a super soldier Captain America from the future, one-man army corps, if you will, right? And this book has social commentary that is very subtle, and it is exactly what it is, right? It still holds up, right? He needs a friend, so now we have a simulated friend. This cover, I thought that was, in my little four-year-old mind, that was a real woman trapped in concrete. I'm like, oh my God, she can't cover her face as he's throwing her and stuff. This actually gave me anxiety, right? This is some of Kirby's greatest social commentary ever, right? 8 issues, you know, actual resources. OMAC just kicks so much ass with Brother Eye. You know, second issue gets into Mr. Big, who has enough money. He rents out a whole town and hires assassins to come after OMAC, if I remember right, things like that. And it's not preachy. It is really not preachy, right? But what's the point of that? Well, they ended up tying this to KAMANDI, right? So KAMANDI, the book that lasted about 59 issues. It ended up, I think it's 59. I have the last issue here somewhere. But KAMANDI, my God, I have the Kirby stuff right here for easy reading. I have almost a full set, but I have all the Kirby stuff, right? I just recommend maybe the first between 36 and 40 issues, right, of KAMANDI, to be honest with you, right? Because he left the book. But anyway, KAMANDI, what's great about this book is that KAMANDI comes out of a bunker. He's named after the bunker he's in, KAMANDI, right? And he lives with his grandfather. And KAMANDI comes out of the bunker into this post-apocalyptic world, right? The great disaster hit, but it's not caused by radiation. It was a mystery, right? And as he travels through this world, KAMANDI is one of us. He reads comic books when he finds them. There's Demon #1 in one of these early issues, you know, as a little bit of an advertisement because Kirby was doing that book as well. but he comes out as a boy. He grew up looking at microfiche films and things like that. So it feels like the world of 1972. Then he comes out and he sees it devastated, and he runs across a wolf that speaks to him and stuff like that, right? And I always thought that the first issue was a tiny little take on Little Red Riding Hood, because he goes out and the wolf comes in and kills his grandfather. Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf ate, her grandmother and stuff like that. That's how I thought he was doing in this. But the great thing about it is, as we go through the series, we discover this world with KAMANDI. That's just so much great stuff in there, right? So over the years, after Kirby left and stuff, they ended up really tying it into OMAC, to where Buddy Blank was maybe his grandpa, is what they were saying. And they've also taken Buddy Blank, who was OMAC. He was a janitor, ended up being experimented on, and became that super soldier, if you will, through Brother Eye giving him the power. The Global Peace Agency came down. I would have tied him into the somehow with the Question years later. I would have in my head, because the Global Peace Agency had skin costume. They covered their faces so nobody would know who they are, because they knew a great disaster was coming, and OMAC was supposed to. I'm tearing this up. I'm supposed to stop that. So their big idea was to merge OMAC and KAMANDI and make that part of his history, tying up everything to the fact that the last issue, KAMANDI and man, I think it's a mess, right? Just stick to the good stuff, right? The Kirby years is what I'm saying, right? So you take this, and this was highly influential. We'll talk about this in a minute here, right? So if you don't want to go back and try to get all those KAMANDI issues and stuff like that, about, God, was it 10 years ago, guys? They came out with a one-shot that there was an oversized issue 32 of KAMANDI that came out that had a Jack Kirby interview in here. It reprinted issue 1, gave you the map of the world, and it continued the story. But I think they also put in the last issue that never came out due to the DC implosion of 77. So there's a KAMANDI challenge special you can get. And due to the anniversary of 2017 is when I think this came out, they had a KAMANDI challenge, 12 issues. And they did this in the tradition of DC challenge back in 1985. It's a round robin. Supposedly they took a bunch of artists and writers, put them in a hat, pulled them out, and everybody got to write one issue with a random artist. The fact that Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palamotti did their issue together, I kind of don't believe that. But everybody got to do one issue, a 12-issue story. And the point of the matter was they were to write KAMANDI in a way that you left a cliffhanger that was supposed to be no way for him to survive or get out of it, for the next team to come up and figure out how to get out of that. So there was 12 issues with a bunch of people that came to do that. Now, this book was highly influential over the years. Oh, here we go. I don't think. Oh, yes, everybody wants you to do that video. Okay. I'm on the edge of my seat. What will Tim show next? Thanks, man. Let's do that video. Yeah, I definitely want to see that video, Sleeper. Gore says, oops. I don't think Tim has enough comics. I'm getting rid of some, man. It's too much to handle. This has been accumulated since 1977. I agree on the greatness of here we go. Sleepy. I agree on the greatness of OMAC. Greatly overlooked. Yeah, I generally overlooked. I do. And then here we go. Is Buddy Blank a real human being? I know what you're alluding to, and I think I might have already mentioned it, but I've actually read somewhere over the years, and God, it's going to kill me. I'm going to end up having to do the research. But over the years, there was a story somewhere or talk about where they were trying to say that he was a descendant of Superman of some way, shape, or form. So I don't know. I mean, we're doing a Blade Runner thing here. Is he a replicant or not, and things like that. I know what you're talking about, but I'm going to say yes at this point. Yeah, I'm going to say yes at this point. I don't know. Like I said, now there's never a simple answer with this, with all the stuff that they've messed with over the years with Kirby stuff. I just imagine Owen Wilson as KAMANDI. Oh, that's great. I don't know if you got here or not, but you need to check out Autumn Lands by Kurt Busiek. When the human pops up, or just check out my last video where I said, did DC miss out and stuff like that. Okay. Ooh, love tying it with the question. In my head, as these comic books came in, that's what I wanted to do. The question, whatever he did, in my opinion, with the mask and stuff, that's who I saw. Already, I've got a beat up copy of a Charlton comic, probably the second or third appearance of the question, and it's coverless and stuff. So when I saw the mask and I saw I saw the Global Peace Agency, I put those together in my head just because the comics were close I read them close together, stuff, right? So anyway, back to Kamandi being influential, right? They've had some fun. This is just a fun series right here, right? But I got it because it's Kamandi. But you can go back to the '90s with Carl Kessel and Tom Grummett doing the Superboy, Con-El, if you will, issue 50. They turned him into Kamandi in a way. He wakes up with long hair in a jungle, and there's Prince Tufton and this and Caesar and all these other people. And I'm like, what are they doing, right? So this is the '90s. You just kind of let it go. This is for fun because I'm gonna go ahead and tell you what happened from what I remember. I mean, there's some Kirby action here, man. I mean, this is Kamandi for fun, right? But basically, what happens? Are they out of order here? Sorry, guys. Here we go. Yeah, 53. Yeah, they tie into a lot of, the more you know about Kamandi, the more fun these books were. But it turns out he's on an island out in the Pacific. Okay. And there's been it ties into Kirby stuff. There's been some experimentation, if you will, right? So what killed me about that is that they made you feel like it was the actual Prince Tufton and the Great Caesar, all of those actually from Kamandi. I was like, what are they doing? Well, they're in the 20th century, in the '90s, out on an island, right? Um, and then I highly recommend this only if you are a John Byrne fan and a completist, and you want to see an artist finding his voice, finally getting work and figuring things out, right? But it's the Charlton Comics. This is a first print. God, how many did these do? I think they did like maybe 7 or 8 of these, and then they actually continued with the numbering by reprinting them. So like issue number 8 or 9 is actually issue 1. And as you can see, Kirby inspired cover there, the raft, Statue of Liberty. And the whole premise of this is that there was nuclear war. There's a story about how someone tricked the two superpowers into firing their missiles, and there was a set of astronauts up in orbit, and they come back down, and randomly they end up finding a frozen Viking who starts unthawing from his iceberg due to nuclear radiation. And there are mermen, people underground, robots, all sorts of things going on. And you can actually see you can actually see John Byrne. Yeah, there we go. That's the Viking, if it'll show up. These are very old, printed on a news press that the mafia owned, and they used it for cereal boxes as well. They took turns, right? But anyway, just it's kind of cool to see John Byrne sort of starting to become John Byrne. He'd been doing Raj 3000 in the back of E-Man. I don't know if they popped up in these Charlton books or not. And then all of a sudden, like I said, he made it to Marvel, and he did some Willie and the Chopper Bunch and some other stuff. But in the '80s, out of nowhere, they recolored him. Fantagraphics got a hold of him, called it Doomsday Squad instead of Doomsday Plus One. So they are affordable, guys, if you want to get these. I really need to rebag these, right? So yeah, Gil Kane doing covers, which blew my mind. Here's a John Byrne cover. So yeah, and years later at IDW, he actually did a story. I didn't dig it out. It wasn't very good, called Doomsday Plus One, and it's kind of forgettable. I think it was 7 or 8 miniseries, and it was just about a bunch of humans, and there's a nuclear war, and I was sort of like, oh, what happened, Byrne? You know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, like that. So if you also want to read something that is fun, and I do need to complete this series, at least this arc, is your Savage Dragon. Okay. Eric Larson, who did a fantastic story arc here leading up to Savage Dragon's 100th issue. I think it started in issue 75, perhaps 76, since it says first issue, the setup. But basically, I'm going blank on the character's name. But our Savage Dragon, the hero, the cop, decides that it is time. It's sort of like, what if you killed Hitler? If you went back in time and killed Hitler, could you kill Hitler? That's kind of how I remember it, right? So what he did is that he went ahead. He didn't go through time or anything, I don't think. But anyway, he ends up killing a major villain, okay, overlord or something. Who knows, right? Whatever. I don't know, right? And what happened was it ended up changing time and it brought about this savage world. And this was Eric Larson's excuse just to do Kamandi. There's even a part in here where Savage Dragon he wants some answers about where he's at and what's going on, where am I at? And you see in the back of him a blonde haired guy with blue jean shorts and boots running away. You never see him from the face, and it's Kamandi. You know, that's who it is. You know, and that's just it. He never really talks to him, right? And in the meantime, in this savage world, he goes on adventures. We run into characters who are still there, like Jerry Ordway's Wild Star, Madman pops up, Larson's guys get in here. But I love the absolute. I got to rebag these, man. So anyway, this ran all the way up to the 100th issue. I'm still needing some a few of them, but he made it look like, first of all, this is when he was making it look like an old 70s Bronze Age Marvel book. You know what I mean? But he does the double splash pages. He does the 3-chapter stories, just like in Kamandi. There's Kirby monsters in here, Kirby homages, Kirby riffs on pages. Just a lot of good stuff. To me, this is prime Eric Larson when he's doing Kirby, right? Like I said, Madman pops up. Yeah, a little riff there. So yeah, Eric Larson has bridged that gap in between, like, what if the 70s and sort of 80s never stopped? You know what I mean? But yeah, just fantastic. This savage world, leading up to this. A double, triple size issue 100. And that's basically the only Savage Dragon I can read, right? So, guys, like I said, for you guys that popped in, thanks for joining me. There's all sorts of other stuff. If I just informal, just really just kind of went around and grabbed what I could think. There's books like Sweet Tooth. I really wished I'd pulled out my Baudet Cobalt 90, Cobalt 60, 90. I'm getting confused. Strontium 90, all this stuff. There's Baudet that did stuff. There's Sweet Tooth. I have the first issue of Sweet Tooth. I never really got into, but that's post-apocalyptic world. There's just so much stuff out there. Like I said, there's The Walking Dead. Let's see if I got anything noted down here, just to kind of recommend other stuff, right? And if you're watching this in the future and you made it this far, or if you're here now, I'm going to read the next few comments, so don't run off, guys. But oh my goodness, Miguel sent me something. Okay, so anyway, let me see if I got something here. I had some notes here. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, I talked about that. They considered The Dark Tower, Jay Lee, Peter David. I think they consider that post-apocalyptic. I don't know. Strodium Dog. Oh man, see a lot of this. I really made it. Buck Rogers. I could have pulled out my Buck Rogers stuff. There you go, going all the way back. Car Warriors. I'm just doing the ones I've actually read. DMZ. I didn't really enjoy DMZ. Not for me. East of West. I heard about that for years. X Mutants from the '80s, where we had John Byrne like art, if you will. Um, Hulk the End and Punisher the End. I didn't pull those out. Those were one shots during a post-apocalyptic world. Last American. Yeah, The Last American. I think that was, help me out, guys. Was it First Comics? Or I think it was Dark Horse Comics did that one. Might have had a few publishers. I never really read that one. And that's what I'm saying. Mighty Samson. I should have pulled out a few issues of Mighty Samson from the Gold Key days. I've only read a few of those. Those were fantastic. Scooby Apocalypse, Wacky Raceland. Those are a bit more modern stuff. Xenophonic Tales, and if you want to, I'll throw out Why the Last Man there. I don't know. There we go. So anyway, guys, let's read what we got here. Vic Shade popped up just in time to say goodbye. John Burns. Oh, I know what you're talking about here, Afro. Yes, I have no mouth and I must scream. I have it here. I have it in the very box I pulled out these Doomsday books on the top in my closet top box. John Burns' chilling adaptation of Harlan Ellison's "I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream" was interesting post-apocalyptic sci-fi science fiction. I had my hands on it, and I should have brought it out. It didn't register that it was post-apocalyptic in my head. Ooh, got to hunt down that Savage Dragon run. Great heads up. Yeah, it's like I said. If you know Eric Larson, you know Savage Dragon, and this is like him channeling pure Kirby, man. Great stuff. I got to finish it up also. Currently, we've got Geiger with the nods to Atomic Nights. That was the yeah. I've already shown that. I showed that briefly, Sleepy. So I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah. Jump back at the beginning, see what I shown out there, and I'll be looking. And guys, make sure you have subscribed. I'm a little loopy. We covered a lot of stuff. I had a great time doing it. Thanks for popping up here and sticking with me through this. Thanks for everybody that popped in late. And make sure that you comment and tell me some other post-apocalyptic dystopian stuff, right? I'm sitting here talking to you now and I'm realizing I have things like uh I have the adaptation of Do Androids Dream of a Electric Sheep. I could have got my Blade Runner out. Yeah, like I'm saying, there's tons of stuff around here. I could probably do this all day long going through this stuff, right? So anyway, make sure you subscribe, share the video, leave a comment, thumbs it up, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and make sure you pop back up here next time we do this. And give me some ideas. This is off the top of my head since everybody's here. Throw in a comment, man, of a topic, genre, character, anything like that you want to see. Yeah, I'm always looking. Usually these ideas hit me randomly, just whatever I feel like doing. It's very, very zen sometimes, right? Sleep Reader's going to back up. Gorbadal says, great seeing you. And Vic Shade said, yes, you missed it, Vic. You got to hit that bell, sir, so you know what I'm doing this, man. And actually, thank you, Vic, for actually commenting on my last video, man. Appreciate that, man. Okay, man, war genre. I've got a few war books. Okay, guys, so be excellent to each other. Read your comics, man. Read your comics, be excellent to each other, and we're out. Thanks for everybody popping in. Until next time.